Ardevd.
Oh, welcome to another iPace driver show with myself, Gary Whitaker, and iPace owner, and my friend.
Ardevd.
Indeed.
Also an iPace owner.
Indeed. Yeah, so we'll kick off as normal with our regular news section, and obviously the news this time is somewhat curtailed by what's going on in the world.
Indeed, the thing we shall not mention.
Other than in passing to say that it's affected a lot of things, and obviously one of the things it's affected quite badly is accessibility to chargers.
Indeed.
You were saying up in Scotland it's been particularly bad.
I wouldn't say particularly bad, but there are quite a high proportion of them. The problem is that, obviously, as we know, the primary charging provider in Scotland is Carplay Scotland, and they're council run. So most of their chargers are either in council car parks, council office, the car parks associated with council buildings, or swimming pools, or, etc., etc. So, and quite a lot of those are, not only is the building closed, but they've closed off the car parks as well. So there are quite a few chargers. I mean, there's loads you can still get to. Things at places like hospitals and stuff, obviously, are still running. But anything that's in a sort of like just up the road from me, we've got Burns Cottage, which has got a charger in it, but you can't get in because they've actually put the barriers across the car park. So there's a fair number of them. Carplay Scotland updates. They've got a page on their website. They also update by Twitter quite regularly. And then I take the data that they tweet and then put it into PlugShare, so that at least PlugShare is as up to date as it can be. But yeah, it's a bit hit or miss. It requires a bit more checking before you go anywhere, but luckily nobody's allowed to go anywhere, so it's not a big a deal.
It's very true. Well, actually, there are people who do have to go places. So we've got essential workers, and I was talking to an NHS member the other day who's complaining about the charges in England, particularly the polar charges which are at pubs. Because the ones local to him are all pubs, and obviously they've closed the doors, closed the gates, can't get in, can't get to the chargers. The good news, though, is that people like Polar have made charging free for people. In fact, Polar have just said that they're going to do away with the subscription for a couple of months. Pay it up. NGE locally are not charging for charging, so this is really good. I mean, it's a really good way of doing it. I have a couple of things on the electric vehicle front. I mean, not particularly iPace related, but we've had known a couple of manufacturers of EVs have given EVs free to the NHS for use.
Indeed.
I think MG gave all their ZSEV demonstrators ahead at all the dealers to
they did, which was really nice gesture, I thought.
Really good idea. And also, people are still getting their iPaces, although the production had stopped and it is coming back online. We hear one of the biggest orders for iPaces this year was from the NHS. And there's a lot of people there expecting and waiting for cars and actually needing cars to get places. Some doctors and surgeons and people. And those are starting to come back online, and people are starting to pick them up. And if they have picked them up, one of the things which might be useful for them is the video I've just published very recently, which is my beginner's guide to the iPace, which I put up a couple of weeks back. It's my most viewed video, which is probably explained. It's not unexplained.
That's probably why, yeah.
It's surprising with a lot of people in it, but it's a quite a little long little video. It goes over a lot of stuff. It's also got links to a lot of other people's videos, including yours and a few other people who've also provided really useful stuff for beginners to learn about that. But I go into fundamentals like charging, what the ports are, what the charge ports are, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's quite useful. Hopefully people will enjoy it and find it useful, but that's up there now, and I'm just sort of pointing to people to it because I know a lot of people get their cars and have no idea what to do with them. And they learned all the lessons we learned over months of owning them.
Exactly, yeah. It's been very much a trial and error process for the longer term owners, particularly the early day owners.
The other thing I want to talk about on charging was that we've got some new chargers. Finally got the first of the Ionity at extra services, the Lead Skeleton. Now, obviously, we know about the pricing of Ionity, and we've spoken about that at length. One thing to just bring up on that is, at the moment, it appears that the Jaguar charging app is still charging the old rate for the Ionity chargers.
Yeah, there was a bit of uncertainty about that. I read a few reports from people that have messaged me, and there was something in the forums as well about it, saying that it's coming up still as being, I think it's £7.90, in fact, rather than even than £8.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard whether any of them, whether their final bill was still that, or if they got billed a larger amount at the end.
I think they would actually have a very strong argument for contract at the point of purchase if they charged anything.
I agree, yeah, but anything is possible.
And a lot of them are taking screenshots, so I think they could certainly go back to Jaguar and say, oi.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, yeah.
So I think there's some good news and some obviously problematic news at the moment, but it's nice to see. I mean, what's particularly nice to see is there's been a number of MyPace owners volunteering and doing deliveries and the like, and of course it's a very good use of the car. With the other discussion we've had a lot. We've had our virtual MyPace group a couple of times recently, and just chatting with the members there. They were talking about things they should do to take care of the vehicle, and we've had an email come out from Jaguar about that.
Yes,
which I know you saw.
Yeah, I mean, I got that as well. It seems to be, as always seems to be the case with these things, it's a little bit hit or miss whether you got the email or not. Now, I don't know if it's.
I didn't get it.
You didn't get it?
No, I didn't get it. So,
see, I was about to say, I don't know if it's something in relation to leasing vehicles as opposed to purchasing them.
Yeah, it may well be.
Which you're not getting it might might make that a relevant observation. But yeah, it was it was just an email from Jaguar to say, this is how we recommend you look after your car during the current situation where nobody's allowed to really use it very much. They've obviously had a lot of questions via the dealers about this over the last couple of weeks. And it seems to fly pretty much in the face of every bit of conventional wisdom as to what you should do with EVs if you're not going to be using them for a while. As I say, I mean, you've seen it since then, though, haven't you?
Oh, I have indeed.
You have actually read it, yeah. Now, obviously, Jaguar's recommendation is that you just plug your car in and leave it plugged in.
And the battery management system will take care of itself. And
indeed.
I mean, and the main reason behind that seems to be to keep the 12-volt battery charged up, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting but strange because I've never had an issue, and I know for a fact that the 12-volt battery does top up.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of is that if the car is allowed to go into deep sleep, maybe it stops topping the 12-volt up at that point, and that maybe. I'm not 100% certain about. But certainly during regular usage, whether the car's plugged in or not, it constantly tops the 12-volt up from the HV battery.
So it's interesting advice, and as you say, it flies in the face of other people's advice. Mind you, having said that, a lot of battery management type advice comes from Tesla owners, old Nissan owners, where there were potential issues with leaving things long term. I mean, we've definitely heard about phantom drain on some of those cars, which the MyPace just doesn't suffer from.
Exactly,
I mean, I basically didn't drive my car for 3 weeks, came back to it and hadn't lost any charge at all.
Yeah. And I did
it got to the point where it had cobwebs on it.
I mean, I did a video ages ago on that very subject, and it suffered almost zero phantom drain. Mine was left for just over 2 weeks, it was, and it lost 3% in that 2 week period.
That's pretty amazing, really, isn't it? It's,
So there is that element of it where Teslas, for example, as you say, would have to be plugged in really just to stop the phantom drain, taking it over a 3 month period. That could pretty much kill you.
On the reverse to that, of course, though, is the advice on Teslas is never to leave them at 100% charge. So
exactly, and that's fairly conventional wisdom for any form of lithium ion battery. It's not just Tesla, any form of lithium ion battery. If it's going into any form of storage, the recommendation is to charge it up to somewhere between 30 and 60%, depending on on who you listen to. But
yeah, I think possibly with the MyPace, of course, we're not actually at 100% battery ever.
Exactly.
86% with tops and tails or whatever it actually really is. But the and also the BMS seems to be quite good at managing that.
It seems to be a fairly sophisticated, and I remember one of the Jaguar engineers gave a piece of advice to do that, charge it up to 30 to 50% if it was going into long-term storage.
Yeah.
But interestingly, Jaguar did not consider a couple of months to be long-term.
No, long-term is more like a couple of years, isn't it?
Basically, his sort of comment was, if you're going to be storing it for sort of 9 months or more, then it's worth doing. That anything else, they didn't consider it to be an issue. So they do seem to have got a really sophisticated and really good BMS going.
Yeah, I think this is actually one of the reasons why we have this thing about the overnight time charging. The fact that they wanted the BMS to run in this manner of charging to 100%, keeping everything nicely ticking over, nicely managed, nicely balanced all the time.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, I know on some other vehicles, I mean, as I've mentioned, the MG ZS EV, got one of those on long-term test at the moment for the magazine I write for. And that's having to be charged fairly regularly to keep the batteries level. So it needs a regular full charge on a slow charger, can't be done on a fast charger, which is fair enough. But it only does that if you charge it to full. So you don't have this ability to. With the iPace, will actually sort of manage that to make sure it gets done fairly early on in the cycle. So it's always done. But the other cars may vary on this. So.
Indeed, yeah. So I mean, obviously our discussions are very iPace specific. That's easy for you to say. But yeah, for general EVs, there's all sorts of variations depending on the manufacturer, what kind of BMS they've got, what kind of battery thermal management they've got, etc.
Yeah, and thermal management's probably the key thing in this for battery life. But I know the Jaguar engineers were hyper cautious on the battery. It's one of the reasons why we were able to have the range increase recently, because they could be a little less cautious on the battery. Exactly, but they're still pretty hyper cautious on it.
I know. I mean, there's still scope for further, but I have my doubts as to whether we'll see that or not. But there is scope to do more and free up even more in terms of efficiency and range, but I'm not sure that they're quite at the point in their life cycle yet where they're ready to push it to those kind of edge cases, if you like.
But you were saying you've been really impressed with your range recently.
Massively so. I mean, what we're going to discuss in the main feature, you'll see it. As I explained, my range is looking less impressive at the moment because it's been pretty cold here and I've been using the car at nights. But I mean, I've been getting sort of 32, 33 kilowatt hours per 100 miles, which is equating to like 200. Well, at one point I got it to the point where it was equating to 270 odd mile range.
That's pretty impressive.
Which was hugely impressive. But in general, I'm getting, equivalent consumption figures for 250 miles comfortably on 22-inch wheels. I mean, I think Jaguar undersold, as they tend to do. I don't know if you've noticed that with Jaguar in general, but they're one of the few manufacturers that tends to sell things. Where they will say, for example, the car's not to 60 speed. They have been slightly conservative with it, and that's fairly consistent across the Jaguar range. It's not just the iPace they've done that with. They will publish figures that the car can comfortably meet, and when you actually get your hands on the car, they'll advertise 4.5 seconds. The car will actually do 4.2, 4.3 seconds. And I think they've done the same with that range update, because I am seeing much better figures than the advertised figures now. Yeah,
I was as well. When I had enough driving to actually make them worthwhile. I'm only doing short hops at the moment, so obviously that's driven it down. But even so, and considering the temperature, you'll see when I do, again, talking about the main feature, which we'll come on to in a minute, you'll see some of that in that as well. So let's move on to that main feature. What are we talking about tonight?
It seems like a good segue.
It does indeed.
Very professionally done.
So tonight we're talking about apps.
Indeed.
Apps in general. So I'm going to cover WattCat, which is Ardevd. I'm never quite sure how he pronounces it.
I know, I've never sure either. I was hoping
I'll have to ask him, actually. So, in fact, if you want to ask him any questions, he's going to be looking at the comments in both of our videos, and we'll be answering them on WattCat. So that would be quite useful to find out. But WattCat's an Android-based program which he produced, and actually, shall I show it? That's probably a good start. Let's start with seeing what we've got. This is WattCat. Oh, this is WattCat actually.
Yes.
So as you can see, it's got a lot of new features over and above what's in the standard application. First thing you'll notice is it shows the colour of my car, which is quite nice, and the tyre pressures. Now there has been this actually uses the same programming interface that the standard app uses. In fact, it uses the same login as well. So WattCat doesn't store your login; it just passes it straight onto the Jaguar. So if you signed up for Jaguar Remote, you can use the WattCat app as well. And it's got a fair degree of features on it, including the ability to start the preconditioning. Just move that out of the way so I can actually see what's going on. Across the top, you can see we've got charging, parked, and alarmed. If you click the alarm, you can set the lock. If you click the climate, you can turn the climate control on. And it's got a few extra features over and above that, which are really useful. Obviously, it's only as good as the API. Now, one of the nice things he's added recently is this camper mode, which is very, very cool. And in camper mode, you can basically say you want to keep the air conditioning or the heating going for a certain amount of time, which is really useful if you're going to line the car and do it. And you see, it starts off showing this camp mode at the top and tells you what degrees you can set it to, and you can stop that if you want to stop that and go and keep going on something else. But I think that's a really nice mode because it's something we didn't have on the iPace at all, the ability to do that. Yeah. The only way you could do it was to go into the settings and keep basically waking the car up to get the heating back on. So sort of put preheat in multiple times on the settings. So I'll stop that now. So you've also got the you can see down the bottom you've got the option for the charge status and the range. You can see I can trigger the things. You've also got charging, which is quite a nice feature as well. So on charging, we've got a few things which again are not available on the normal standard iPace app. The first thing you'll notice is down the bottom here we've got the ability to set a max state of charge, which is I think it's something which a lot of people want. I mean, the actual what's the word I'm looking for? The information he gives out actually says that max state of charge is not something you really need to worry about, and it's only there really if you really want to reduce it down. Like that 50% you were saying, if you leave it for 2 years, maybe. Yeah. But this is really nice. Time charging.
Yes.
We know you've done a huge video on time charging.
Yes. I would love to think that video will become redundant someday.
Now, again, this is only as good as the API is and the connectivity you've got. But it is. You can set a start for charging, set an end for charging, and it does seem to work. I've tried it out a few times. It will start and stop. Now, obviously, this does rely on the phone app being running all the time, being able to run in background. So if you power saving settings on your phone, it may stop it working and all that sort of stuff. So it's a little bit fiddly to get it working, but it's definitely a lot less fiddly in getting the iPace version to work.
Well, yes.
And if that's what you want to do, if you want to do a straight top and bottom charge over a certain length of time, it'll work fine. Now, I'm just going to add a caveat to that, going back to what we said earlier. The whole thing with the battery management of the iPace, it's set up to do that long length of charge. Yeah. This may actually truncate the battery management's processing potentially, which I'm not sure how useful that is all the time. But again, this is not meant as something you do every day. Potentially, you'd still want to charge to full sometimes. So it's a useful. It's definitely a useful thing for those people who've got cheap rate electricity.
Exactly. Yeah.
And at the moment, if you've got something like an agile tariff, you're doing really well because they're paying you to take electricity.
Exactly, yeah.
So let's get that going again. hit that button. I should start it back up again. So it started it right from the start. That's not very good. Anyway, well, when it started from right to the start, let's talk about some of the other features on this. So you've got the ability to flash the headlights like you do on the normal app. So most of the stuff you have on the normal app is here. The bits which are, and there's nothing really missing, but obviously you need an Android device to do this and use it. One of the two things are really good on here. Okay, got the camera mode again, which is brilliant. But the things that I quite like on here is the estimation of charge time remaining. That seems to be really accurate compared to the normal app. And obviously the range is just taken from the API.
Yeah.
The other thing which I like about this is it updates. Unlike the Jaguar app, which will sometimes not update, even if the API has got figures, this will update very regularly. You can see it's been ticking away, updating while it's running, and that's a really useful feature. I did try and mention that it's pin protected when you unlock the vehicle, so you can't just go and click the button and unlock it. You do have to put a pin in.
Okay.
One thing we skipped past when this screen was going on actually earlier is and it's not working for me at the moment, but I know he's working on fixing this, is this logging screen, which is really useful normally. It will actually show you your charge profile as you're charging, so you can see how long your charge takes and what you can do with it. Okay. And obviously you can pause charging from here remotely as well, which is quite nice.
Yep.
And as we said, the time charging is somewhat brilliant.
Yeah, that's genius.
Yeah, and especially when it works, which is really good.
Yeah.
You see, you hopped in on this one as well. Well, I was recording this earlier. So there's some other features as well which are quite useful on here. Now, I did mention that he's put a lot of information in here. It explains about the battery capacity. It explains about how charging control will work and what versions of the TCU management systems you have to have.
Yeah.
And also explains a bit about taking care of your battery, which I think are really useful things to have in there. So a lot more features down the side. My favourite thing of all is this screen, the details.
Yeah, that is very useful.
So this gives you all sorts of things you would not get from normal, particularly things like your 12-volt battery voltage, which is very useful thing to keep a trial. It's not real time. This is one thing to remember. It's based on the API again, so this can be several hours old. So you've always got to allow for that. But it's good to see trends, and I certainly could see this going down when I had my problems with the car. The 12-volt battery had dropped quite significantly. So I think this is a really useful screen to have on available to you. And it's got a lot of other things. It's got TCU versions in there. You can see when you're pre-charging. It's quite nice to watch this on an overnight charge. You can actually see the preconditioning actually happening.
Yeah.
Which is really, really useful to have. And you've got your buttons for the service mode and transport mode easily to hand there as well. So I just think this is a really, really good app. It's got a lot going for it. It has features which the normal app doesn't have. I'm getting very tongue-tied tonight. And it's got basically everything you want. It's got things like you can get to your alerts as well. It's just a very well-written, really easy to use, and it just works, which is basically all you want from an app.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's phenomenally done. I mean, he's done a tremendous job. I was obviously one of the people pressuring him, not pressuring, that's the wrong word, but begging him to release an iOS version of it, which he pretty much has categorically said he'll never do.
Well, he's not an iOS programmer, so
exactly.
And from being a developer myself, I know that's so difficult to transition from one to the other. So
exactly, so luckily, one of the users, JohnnyHush, has stepped into the breach and he's created an iOS version. Now, this is very much in beta at the moment, so you have to bear with the fact that it's graphically, there's very little in the way of graphical presentation. It's very text heavy, so it doesn't look as nice as WattCat, but it does provide some really useful, basically more or less all the same functionality there is on screen now. It is, as you can see, it's very text based as opposed to WattCat, which has got some nice graphics and stuff in it. That's primarily down to the fact that it is very much a beta trial at the moment. And it, it will improve. He's been very active in developing it so far anyway. So if I set this going, you can see obviously the name of my car is at the top there, the Millennium Falcon.
Yep.
And the little blue circles to the right of it just show that the data is up to date. Once that goes out of date, you get a little blue exclamation mark in the middle there just to show that the information you're looking at is, and it only means that it can be just a few minutes out of date, and
so it's the standard API refresh rate.
Exactly, yeah. Just let me squeeze forward. In fact, there you see what it does when it goes out of date. So we've got then the high voltage battery, obviously, is the this is quite tricky to manage. There we go. So you've got the high voltage battery at the top there, which shows obviously your 94 kilowatt hour battery. Charge level, now mine's at 100% at the moment. And you can see it's 215 miles. That's what I was saying about my current range being less impressive, because I've done a fair bit of nighttime driving.
Well, I imagine nighttime temperatures where you are at the moment are quite on the low side.
Yeah, I mean they're between sort of 0 and 5 degrees. Well, I say 1 and 4 degrees overnight.
Yeah.
So that's why it's only getting 215 miles at the moment.
I think this time last year we would have been very happy with 215 miles at 1 to 5 degrees.
Yeah, isn't that a peculiar thing how expectations shift?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if this time a year ago, if I could see 215 miles on my screen at these temperatures, I would have been delighted.
Yeah.
So yeah, the charging status is initialized, and that's because it's plugged in at the moment. But my charger's set up with a timer in the charger itself to come on at 1:30 to take advantage of my Octopus Go tariff. So it just says initializing, but it will change to charging, at 1:30 when the charge starts, although it's at 100% now anyway. So if we start this going now, you can see you've got the limit SOC function, which mimics very closely what WattCat has in it as well. So you can, I'll just scroll forward a bit there. Yeah, if you tap on that, it takes you into the limit state of charge page. Works in very similar way, but instead of a slider, you actually have a text input of whatever your desired limit is. And then you activate it by pressing the start button. Now this app, what it does is it actually starts an audio recording on your phone at this point. And the reason it does that is so that the phone's power management systems won't shut the app down.
From a developer point of view, that's really clever.
Yeah, so the audio recording stays on your phone. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't get uploaded to any servers or anything. There's no privacy issue as such, but it's purely to keep the app alive while the car is charging, because obviously that can be 8, 9, 10 hours.
Yeah.
So it's a very clever bit of work. And obviously, for some people it might sound a little bit alarming that your phone is then recording all night, but it's only kept on the phone. It doesn't get uploaded. And then once the phone, it regularly polls the car to check what the current state of charge is. And once it gets to whatever you've input into that text box, it sends a pause charge message or command. Pauses the charge, stops the voice recording, and deletes it from your phone. So it's never saved anywhere, and as soon as it's finished, as soon as it's got to the desired state of charge, it stops. And likewise, if you manually stop it like I just did there, it also does the same process. So that works really well. And I'll just pause that for a second. Much like WattCat, though, it does rely on having telematics. I think it's 16.2 or higher.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it will just pause for a short time and then it will restart after. It can be anything from 5 minutes to 5 hours. and it will restart.
Yeah.
But as long as you've got telematics 16.2 or higher, that's not an issue. He is also working on a workaround for that, where it will continue to monitor the car, and if it detects that it's started charging again, it will send the pause command again. It doesn't do that at the moment, but he's working on that for a future update, which then would be a toggle switch that you would use. So if you're on an old telematics, you can still get that functionality to work properly.
That'd be really good.
Yeah. So he's put a fair amount of thought into those kind of workarounds. But yeah, then again, you've got the 12-volt battery, much the same as yours. It uses the same API, so it's got the same caveats as you had with, it's never 100% accurate. But again, the lowest I've seen is probably 11 point something. So you can monitor trends, and if it drops below, let's say if it drops into the 10s or lower, you kind of have a fair indication that you've got an issue with your 12-volt battery.
I guess that would actually be quite a useful thing to have on probably on both of these, is some sort of graph of what's happening with your battery. Your 12-volt
actually, yeah, that's not a bad idea, actually, yeah. And then below that, you've got your security section. So you've got the alarm is active and the vehicle is locked. You can then unlock it or flash the lights, and it says honk and blink, but it actually does a beep. I've unlocked it here, and you can see that there's no need to enter a PIN, but it does use, well, on my phone it uses the Face ID. If you've got an older iPhone, it will use the Touch ID, so you just hold your thumb over the thumb scanner.
And I should have said, I should have mentioned that that's available on WattCat as well. I really am getting tongue-tied tonight.
So that works really well, though. It's a really nice functionality because you're not having to type in the PIN every time. The new app from Jaguar does the same, admittedly. But it is quite nice and useful. Then we've got the climate and preconditioning. Works in exactly the same way as the Jaguar app and WattCat for that matter, in that you can input a target degrees, a target temperature in that text box, so you can set it to 21, whatever. I set mine to 33. I'm a warm weather character. I generally have it on 23, but then you press the start climate, and exactly the same as the Jaguar app, it just starts your climate control. It will run for half an hour, and then it will shut down. And it gives you a little update showing you how long it's still got to run. You can then obviously manually stop it. You can either leave it to run, or you can manually stop climate at any point, which I've just done, which takes it to 0. And then we go on to camper mode, which I think this app introduced it first before.
I believe it did, yes.
And then WattCat came up with another implementation of it. But it works in a very similar way to the time charging stuff, in that you put in your target temperature in the text box, same again, and then just press the start button. Again, it will start a voice recording, which works in exactly the same way. The difference with this one is, as you can see, it now shows camper mode active, and that would just run indefinitely. It doesn't have a timer on it.
I'm in two minds all the time. I think it's quite nice to be able to say you want to run it for 6 hours. But if you're in a camper and you oversleep, do you want it still to be able to be running?
Exactly. Yeah, I can see for and against on both of them, in all honesty.
But I guess it depends on your battery state. If you've got a particularly low battery state, you perhaps only run it for a couple of hours to keep you warm until you're tucked away nicely. Yeah, maybe
that makes sense. Yeah, but and then it just runs. It will run consistently. It will, the way it works is it just resends a command every 30 minutes to set the preconditioning going again. So that's why it has to be running in the background, and that's why it does the voice recording thing. And then again at the bottom, you've got your tire pressures. Mine are a bit all over the place at the moment. And that's it, really. That's your lot. So yeah, I mean, it's, as I say, it is very. It's
other than some of the details which I've got on the details page on mine, and not having the alerts, it's basically got the same stuff, hasn't it? Which you'd expect because it's the same API.
Exactly. But one other thing that I should say, about the MyPace. I didn't actually say what it was called at any point, did I? It's called MyPace. And one extra thing he's done, which I love, is
Apple Watch support.
Apple Watch support. If you can see, my watch is upside down, but if you can see the little icon top right as you're looking at it, I think.
Yeah.
So that's the MyPace icon. So I just tap on that, and you get, sort of 4 icons like that. So you can unlock the car, lock the car, start the preconditioning, and it also shows you what your state of charge is, your current state of charge.
I'm not sure if you can see this either, but underneath my time and date there, I've actually got widgets on Android, which is quite nice for the charging. And I guess you've got that on the iPhone version
again
as well.
He also does that. If you can just see the MyPace bit there. So again, he's also done the widgets. But the Apple Watch app is absolutely brilliant because the Jaguar one sucks. It looks quite nice, but you can't actually do anything. It tells you the car's locked, but you can't unlock it. You can't lock it. You can't start the preconditioning. It's got zero functionality basically.
That's really good. That is
so
really
he's done
good.
a blinding job with that. I'm very, very happy with MyPace.
Excellent stuff. So while we're talking about apps, the one we wanted to mention was that there's a whole new raft of features in a Better Route Planner.
Indeed.
The ABRP app on Android and iOS. So they've actually added some bits to this, but they've also added a paid tier, which is a little bit controversial, isn't it?
Do you know, it's only controversial. Well, for me, and I'm only speaking for me personally here, the only controversial part about it is how much they're charging for it. I've got no issues with them having a paid tier because it is such a brilliant app now. I'm more than happy to pay. Now, there is a free level as well, which we have to stress. All the functionality they've had up till now, pretty much, as far as I know, is still free. So all of those functions still work that you previously had, but there is now the extra functionality of things like the live weather, which is absolutely brilliant. And it'll adjust your plan then according to what the current temperatures are. If it's raining, it will add a certain percentage to it. It will take the current wind and factor that in. So it takes all of the manual input side of it away, and will just constantly update. If you're on a massive road trip, if you're going to be on the road for 12 hours, it will constantly refactor it for the new weather. So I think it's brilliant. It will also, with some cars, take live data from the car and update it as you're driving as well, which is really nice. Doesn't do that with the iPace, but they are hoping to be able to implement that with iPace at a later date.
So the other things I got on the list was real-time traffic.
Real-time traffic as well.
Good.
I'm less bothered by that aspect because of the way I use a Better Route Planner is I tend to have it running in the background and or not in the background, but on the side, and still use the car's sat-nav. So if I go a different route to a Better Route Planner, it will just recalculate as I'm following the car sat-nav. So the real-time traffic, I'm not really bothered about because I would either be using Apple Maps or Jaguar's built-in sat-nav.
And the other things we got, which are, again, not relevant for us, live charger availability. Now, I've actually had a feed like ZapMap or one of the others, but it's only for Tesla chargers at the moment, which is a little bit disappointing, to be honest. It's actually less useful for Tesla chargers, I would think, because you get that in the Tesla anyway if you've got a Tesla.
Exactly. It seemed like I guess that API, though, is readily available, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
They are planning to add other charging companies.
Yeah, and they have said they're going to try and do that fairly quickly as well, which should be good if they do that. That might actually make it worth doing. Apple Watch app, which obviously will appeal to you. I think from an Android user point of view, there's less in this than perhaps maybe it should be a discount on because you haven't got some of these other bits. But, now, the other thing it does is it logs all your drives as well.
Yes.
Which it's quite nice. I mean, we obviously can do that. Actually, I forgot to mention that when I was showing WattCat, but WattCat will log your journeys because it's using the API, which is logging your journeys anyway. So you've got that ability to do that.
Indeed,
So you can have multiple vehicles on ABRP now, and you can also share your live data with your friends and family. So you can share your journey going on as well. So all of that, I think, is a useful thing.
It's very useful. However, is it worth the price?
Yeah, is it worth €5 a month?
Exactly. 60 euros a year is quite a lot of money. Now, well, it's not a lot of money, but it's not an insignificant amount for an app.
Yeah,
it is a very, very useful app. And I guess it depends on your annual mileage, how much you use it as well. I mean, for me, my primary use for it would be my road trip videos.
Yeah.
Because I don't do huge amounts of long distance driving outside of those videos, in all honesty.
Yeah, so I was thinking I use it about 5 times a year.
Yeah, so I use it slightly more, but that's purely because of those videos. Without those videos, I would have probably used functionality like that last year. I think probably 5 times maybe as well.
Yeah, because I tend to use. I don't only tend to use ABRP when I'm using doing trips to Europe.
Yeah.
Or particularly long distance trips in the UK, where availability, where knowing exactly to the second how much charge I've got is useful. But in Europe, I mean, if I was going on a trip to Europe, I would happily pay 10-15 euros for that trip.
Yes.
But I can't justify paying €5 a month because I wouldn't use it.
Now, I assume you would be able to just take, for example, if you were making that trip, your German trip, I assume you would be able to take a subscription just for that 1 month and then cancel it again after.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that. I mean, maybe that's what you could do and get around.
But for someone like me, where I'm doing those road trip videos, well,
no, it's not at the moment, but
I was doing those road trip videos on a regular basis, but it would only be 1 or 2 a month, mainly during the summer months. You know, again, I would be having to pay, the £5 or €5 a month every single month. I mean, I know it sounds like we're being incredibly tight here when you're, for €5 a month, but it is quite a significant cost for an app,
Yeah, I guess they'd say you're paying for the information services, which is quite like in the hosting, and I mean, I know how much that stuff costs. I mean,
absolutely, I completely get it. I just think for a number of people, that could be enough to be, just enough to put them off doing it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to give people an idea of sort of the cost these hosting things can run up to. I run a community web page, which is basically to connect speakers and IT professionals together for doing talks at events, and that's a small little app, but the data cost of that last year was nearly £7,000.
Yeah.
So you can see how something like this, which is got a lot more users, a lot more scale, the data costs are going to be potentially horrendous on this.
Yeah.
And so I can see they need to raise revenue, and I've got that. I understand that. I think it's just it just seems a lot of money for regular use. I think, as I say, I'm quite happy to pay for those on an ad hoc basis for those particular things. If I need them, I'd pay for them.
Yeah, exactly the same. I mean, and I would happily pay an outright fee for the app, but I know that doesn't help them in terms of hosting because
it's ongoing.
It's ongoing. I don't know. What would you think? I mean, what's your opinion on the €5 a month? Do you think it's too high?
I think if you're regularly using it, it's not an unreasonable amount. I think if you do regularly long distance journeys, which you have to plan and you have to make sure you're going to get there, I mean, sort of a travelling salesman type person, I could definitely see that being a benefit and worth the money. I just don't think €5 a month is actually a massive charge if you can regularly use it.
Yeah.
I think it is a massive charge if you can't regularly use it. What I do feel is that the problem I've got at the moment is the feature level for that €5.
Yeah.
From an iPace driver, and particularly from an Android phone owning iPace driver, there's quite a lot of the features are not particularly useful. I mean, the watch would be really useful if they actually did an Android watch or equivalent version, but they don't. They just do an iOS version.
Yeah. I mean, all the watch app shows you is what your current state of charge should be, and your current location, the street name. So it's not huge functionality, but it just allows you to glance at your watch and say, oh, I should be at 71% now. Glance at your car, oh, I'm at 72%. Okay, I'm fine. It's not a killer feature, but it is nice.
It's nice. It's a nice to have. But it's also something which they've included to make that €5 seem a reasonable amount. I mean, I actually don't think €5 is. I mean, I know how much some of these weather services cost to plug into, so they're really expensive, a lot of them, if you actually have to have proper licenses for them. So I can see why they need to justify that cost if they're using it. But I struggle a little bit with the functionality for non-Tesla drivers. I think you get a lot more benefit as a Tesla driver. €5 a month would be a no-brainer because the advantages you get on it. But as a non-Tesla driver, I'm not so sure.
I mean, there are other cars that they do have the live data on. I think the Nissan Leaf can do it, but you need to have Leaf Spy running in the background as well. But it will take the data from Leaf Spy.
It'd be nice to see if they could get something working to iPace. I know they are working on it. I mean, they're a great bunch of people who do.
Oh, they're brilliant. I've had a lot of interactions with them, and they're very, very proactive and very enthusiastic about the product. One thing they're planning to introduce very soon, well, I say very soon, subject to getting all the approvals required from Android and Apple, is Android Auto and Apple Carplay.
Now if they get that, I would happily pay €5 a month. I mean, that's absolutely the difference. That's a big difference. If you start getting stuff which plugs into the car, then that becomes a definite plus.
Exactly. So I mean, they are working on a lot of things. They were looking at using the Jaguar API to get live data from the car. But unfortunately, one of the things that they need for their algorithm is current power drain. So the amount of power you're currently drawing from the battery is used as part of their calibration process. And the Jaguar API, it's incredibly slow anyway, but it doesn't give you that information.
Well, the API is not meant to be a real-time feed anyway. They'd be better going something like an OBD port feed and getting access there, but then they need to talk to Jaguar to get gateway codes and all that stuff. So it becomes tricky.
There are people who have achieved it, so it's just a matter of trying to find out. I mean, the way it works with things like the Leaf, and I'm not sure if the Kona can do it or not, but that's what they do, is they use an OBD adapter and then have an app running in the background on your phone, which is usually it's Torque on Android, which reads your OBD and CAN bus data, and then it feeds it into ABRP that then interprets it. So it doesn't have a direct interface with the OBD reader. It just accesses it through another app that's running in the background, if you like. So if the Jaguar one becomes available, they will readily integrate it. And the Jaguar one, the Jaguar is perfectly capable of providing all of that data via the OBD port.
It's there. It's just having the ability to get to it.
Because it's the PIDs that you need.
And gateway codes. It's obviously something which is deliberately locked down or deliberately obscured. So if they could get permission to use it, then it would be a very good thing to do. It actually would be in Jaguar's interest to have them do it as well. So
I think so.
Good.
But so I think it's a very useful app. I think the paid tier, it had to come at some point. They're putting a lot of work and they've got a lot of overheads. And it's not reasonable to expect them to survive on donations, which is what they were doing before, because too many people just won't donate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally understand the paid tier. I almost think they should have, a lot of people do Patreons for their channels and they have individual reward levels. I thought they maybe should have more than one subscription level.
Do you know that would? Yeah, I could see how that would be appealing, and they may refine it over time.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, a €3 subscription level, I probably would go for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't sound like a huge difference, but somehow
it is. It is when you had it over a year.
Exactly. Yeah. Or if you have the car for 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. We're talking about less than a cup of coffee.
I know, exactly. I mean, that's why I feel incredibly tight. Something like that.
And I'm an app developer, so I should be really. I do think that the whole app world has got very undervalued. What you actually get,
completely.
But there is an expectation now, and you can't go outside those expectations and get lots of people signing up. So they may actually have been better at a lower subscription rate because they've got more people signing up. But then again, that would be more usage on the servers, and that's the cost. So exactly.
So, but yeah, I mean, I'm very impressed with it. It's still far and away from me. It works out pretty much spot on every time with the iPace. Every trip I've made using ABRP, more recently, over the last, when did they switch to the later versions? Maybe 4 months ago. It's been incredibly accurate, and to within a percent almost every journey.
Excellent stuff. Well, it's great. I mean, we've got some really good apps now. The Jaguar apps aren't actually that bad compared to some other cars. They're very
absolutely good. Yeah.
And at least we've got apps because some cars haven't even got apps. I mean, that's actually a general trend now that I think manufacturers are going to move away from having apps because, for one thing, all the chargers are becoming smart chargers.
Yeah.
If you want to get your Ardevd grant now, you've got to have a smart charger, which allows time charging to be controlled by the app, by the charger's app, not by the car.
Yeah.
So I think that's something will drive certainly the lower cost manufacturers not to have apps.
Indeed. I think the higher end vehicles will always have them because things like preconditioning have become such an expectation now.
Yeah.
I don't think people would go out and spend 60-70 grand on a car now
without it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you might find, and I think this definitely might happen with some of the German manufacturers. You might have subscriptions for your apps going forward, 3 years or whatever it is, that sort of stuff. But yeah,
I mean, Jaguars is kind of like that now because it's because of the in control subscription.
Yes, true.
You do have to pay after, I think it's 3 years you get it for free.
But again, we talk about the cost of things that they're hosting for that must cost them an absolute fortune. I know they don't do it in a house. It's I believe it's Volvo actually handle that. Yes. So they're obviously paying for that usage, and I can't imagine that's cheap.
I know. I wouldn't have thought so. But yeah, I mean, so paying for apps is something that is more normalized now, shall we say, and and certainly a lot more apps seem to be going down the subscription route rather than the single purchase price. And certainly where vehicles are concerned, obviously there's a lot of server use in all of those vehicle type apps, whether it be ABRP or Jaguar. So for them, a subscription based model makes sense. I guess Jaguar can get away with charging more per month, even if there's less functionality. They can probably get away with charging a bit more per month because it's a 60 grand, 70 grand, 80 grand car.
Yeah. And just going back to the ABRP thing, that could be an argument anyway. It's why for Tesla, €5 a month doesn't actually seem a huge amount because it's the cost of the car, $100 grand car. €5 a month isn't a huge amount. And even for the iPace, it wouldn't be a huge amount if it had all the functionality.
Yeah.
I think it's just. Yeah, for other cars it may not be.
Exactly. If you're picking up a used MG ZS EV in a couple of years' time,
€5 a month is probably going to cost almost as much as paying for the car.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have gone that far, but okay.
Not quite that far. They're holding their value really well, so I'm not going to say that.
Yeah. One just to segue off a little bit, but one thing I'm very much looking forward to seeing is the new MG5.
The estate car. Yeah, and I think that's really important for the market that we actually start getting estate cars in other body shapes and move away from just having really SUVs, which seems to have been the reason du jour of all car manufacturers.
Exactly. I mean, there's a lot more variety out now, and it's encouraging to see that you're not now forced to buy, let's say, a saloon car because you want an EV.
Yeah.
You've got a range of options, and they're getting better all the time. I was quite encouraged to see Jaguars, or I-Pace rather, being the third most registered EV in the UK.
Yes, yeah. They've done very, very well with it, and I know we see a lot of complaints on the forums and the Facebooks about things going wrong with cars, but actually it's a very small percentage when you compare it with the number of cars out there.
Exactly. I mean, there's currently, I guess it's stalled a bit, so I think there's still probably somewhere in the region of 18 to 18,500 on the roads. And, you cannot base an opinion of how reliable a car is on the half dozen people on the I-Pace forums that are posting, I've had this or I've had that. And to be honest, the motoring press would be full of it.
Yeah.
If it was widespread that people were having problems, as ever with forums, like with almost every brand of car, the forums tend to be the place that people go to.
Well, what's also interesting is if you actually look across forums, because I do this all the time looking at different cars, the same sort of problems crop up. 12-volt battery problems are very common across virtually all EVs.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think there's going to be a move away from 12-volt batteries because there's absolutely no need to have them these days. If you get the right voltage transformers in place and
exactly,
do stuff.
I don't know about you, but I was actually genuinely surprised to discover that the car had a 12-volt battery when it was just something I hadn't thought about when I bought it.
Yeah, but they all do. All the EVs do, and they all seem to have problems. If the 12-volt battery drops, then all sorts of things go crazy into cars.
Exactly, But yeah, I mean, I think in general, they really have done an amazing job with the I-Pace for the first EV. When you compare with some other bigger companies' results, shall we say. I genuinely think I-Pace has been a consistently good performer for Jaguar, and probably has slightly outperformed their own expectations.
I think it's more than slightly, from what I understand.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. It certainly it means they'll carry on development in that direction. And obviously things are a bit stymied at the moment, but we will be able to move on from that hopefully fairly shortly, and things will get better. And
some degree of normality, at least.
Some degree of normality, and new EVs coming. So it'll be good to see. Yeah. Anyway, that's been a great fun doing that. We've had a few interesting technical issues, but we'll sort those out in the edit.
It'll be smooth and flawless.
It will be smooth and flawless, as we both are.
Indeed. Oh, you smoothie. Right. Anyway.
So you can. If you want to find out anything more about the I-Pace, you can look at my forum, you can look at ABRP's YouTube channel, you can look at my channel, Twitter, we're both on there. I'm Gary WMA on Twitter, and you're just ABRP Dude, I believe.
I'm just ABRP Dude, yes.
Yeah, everywhere now. I think you've even changed it in the I-Pace forum now, haven't you?
I did, yes. Yeah.
So, gosh darn it, no more ABRP Dude everywhere.
Right, yeah. I think it was causing some confusion for people as well.
Yeah, so that's good. But if you want to find anything else, check out our channels, check each other's channels out, because there's some really good stuff on both of our channels, I believe. And we'll see you on the next I-Pace Driver Show.
Indeed. So don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and we will see you next time. In the meantime, everybody stay safe out there.
Yeah, stay safe.
ABRP Dude!